Hello chaps and chapettes, and welcome to a history of the Fiat G.91 Gina, one of the more advanced early jets in the world, and the first fighter to be built by Germany after the end of the Second World War. A plane that had an active lifespan of 37 years in active service as a multi-role fighter, close air support platform, aerobatics display aircraft, and trainer, of course, making it one of the longest serving jets from the 1950s. Of course, there was also the Canberra, which was also quite long serving. If you know the history of the Canberra, you could also check that out on my channel. Now, the production run of 19 years completed with a total of around 756 aircraft completed, and that spans from the G91 pre-production to the G91/4/3, which were the sort of German variants, and including the G91Y as well. Now, to start with this plane, we need to look at Italian avionics and their embracing of the idea of a jet-powered engine with their motorjet engine platform from Caproni Capini. The Caproni Capini N1, a twin-seater prototype plane which for a short time was considered the first jet to take to the sky before they found out that the Germans beat them to it a year prior. These strange time periods. Due to the war and the Allied invasion, however, this plane did not really get very far in its design. A design was set for a new jet fighter, the Reggiani RE 2007, which was a possible prototype being worked on in the early 1940s. The jet would have been similar to the jet of the late 1940s to the early 50s, with a swept-back wing and jet engine in the fuselage. However, never being built and only being seen in blueprints, it's not known how viable it would have been at the time due to the materials available. But the ideas and the lessons from prior designs were still with the Italians and their aviation industry. In the 1950s, with war now ended and the threat of a new one looming with the Reds, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, were in need of a new vehicle to help former enemy nations reform their military to protect the West from the ever-looming boogeymen of the USSR. And so Fiat began development of a new jet interceptor and fighter. The first true jet took to the skies in 1951 with the Fiat G.80, a twin-seater jet with pilot and instructor sitting side by side, equipped with a de Havilland Goblin turbojet. Although not really a success, it did help Fiat's aviation arm with the development of a new fighter/attacker. In 1953, the NBMR1 document, NBRM1A document, was drawn up by the Supreme Commander of NATO to create a lightweight tactical strike fighter. This was issued to all nations of the treaty. A new jet was needed as the current crop of jets were very expensive, complex, and needed to be well maintained, also having a well maintained airfield to take off from, meaning they were vulnerable if the Third World War decided to kick off, because if somebody attacked their runways, they were pretty much screwed. So a lightweight, simple, easy to maintain, and most importantly, capable of taking off from a grass airfield or even a road with minimal amount of ground support plane was needed. They wanted the plane to be capable of Mach 0.95 with a range of around 170 miles, 280 kilometres. The use of the new Bristol Siddeley Orpheus engine and the capability of dropping or launching the nuclear warhead system, and it usually is the case with NATO designed vehicles. A few nations pulled out and developed planes of their own, kind of making design concept a bit pointless and of no real use. The British with the Hawker Hunter, of course, the Americans with the Northrop F-5. The winner of the contest was the well-designed, simple Italian plane, the G91. However, due to the other nations pulling out to develop their own planes, the G.95 was only adopted by the Luftwaffe and later the Portuguese Air Force. Although Greece and Turkey did have trial versions, I believe Britain actually did have a trial, but America also had trials with the US Army Air Force. They wanted to have this plane as basically a tactical attack plane, a ground strike aircraft. But the United States Air Force became a thing, and the US Army Air Force really dissolved, and they started using their own planes. So it didn't become a thing, unfortunately, for the Americans. And it really did hamper the G.95's development, as, well, funds were a little bit hard to come by in that time period. In 1956, designed by the highly respected engineer Giuseppe Gabrieli, father to one of the best fighters of the Axis, the G.55, along with the aforementioned G.80, Gabrieli had a fantastic understanding of aerodynamics. While many others were still struggling, he was the perfect man for the job, along with his team at Fiat. The G.91 prototype took to the skies in August of 1956. Although not perfect, the plane was nimble and easy to fly, although it was not without its issues. The first plane had vibration issues along with control surface problems, which were mainly locking up at top speed, which resulted in the loss of the first prototype plane. Despite this, the plane had won the NATO competition, and with 27 pre-production aircraft ordered, the second prototype had a slightly larger tail surface along with a higher canopy for the pilot's vision. 1958. Following a meeting, the G.91 was chosen as the first NATO lightweight strike fighter, with financial aid from America. However, as said before, America, despite getting a G.91 for evaluation, passed on the plane, along with the French, the Greeks, the Turks, the British. This caused a lot of issues, and the plane, it was expected to be flown by all NATO members to allow ease of use for multiple nations, allow interchanging parts, and most importantly, keep costs down. This would continue to be an issue for the aviation industry for many years. However, all was not lost, as Germany saw potential in this plane and bought the license for the G.91 and began to build their own versions of the plane. The first military aircraft to be built domestically by Germany since the end of the war. Messerschmitt, Heinkel and Dornier all worked together, building separate parts of the plane. The plane had one change from its Italian sibling, which was the installation of twin DFEA 30mm cannons, instead of the quad M3 Brownings, and two extra hardpoints on the wings, which could be used for fuel tanks, gun pods, rockets, and even bombs. Unfortunately, we don't get the gun pods in game, which is a shame. From 1964 until 1981, the production series of planes ended up with the Francesi Tricolorelli, the Italian aerobatics team, due to its nimble nature and ease of use. It was a perfect match for the aerobatics team. 1966 onwards, the plane saw combat with the Portuguese in the Colonial War, where it was used as a close air support weapon against the Pagisi rebels. However, this was not to last too long, as the rebels were supplied with the Australia 2 manpads, which saw an immediate effect on two G.91s as they were lost within 3 days of each other to missiles, while two more were later lost in the year due to anti-aircraft fire. Prior to those losses, the Portuguese had only lost two G.91s in a 7-year period. The plane remained in service until 1993. All in all, the G.91 was not a failure and did help bring the aviation industry back to Italy and Germany. So, in that respect, it was a success. With the ever-changing conditions of the late 1950s, the plane was always going to be slightly obsolete after a 5-year period. However, due to its sleek design, small airframe, ease of repair, ease of service, along with great flight characteristics, it was one of the very few planes from that early era to remain in service for 30 plus years, and is a testament to the design talent of the Fiat team and their engineers. So, in game, how is the G91 series? Well, with the addition of the G91 R3 for Germany, which we see here, and the premium G91 R-4, which is a 9.0 BR, along with the G91 R3 and G91 R1, I think it is, or R2, no, R1, sorry, they're all 9.0, while the G91 pre-production is at 8.7. Now we also have the G91Y, which is at 9.8, which replaced the single Orpheus engine with a General Electric J85, well, two of them in fact, giving the plane 60% more power and allowing up to 75% more payload. The G91Y and R4, unfortunately, are the only versions that get access to the AIM-9 Sidewinders. Now, one of the other advantages of the YS model are the 30mm cannons in the front of it, making the plane relatively strong. It also has one heck of a payload option too. This thing can carry up to 4,000 pounds of bombs along with two AIM-9 Sidewinders. So, yes, very decent payload for this plane. There is a little bit of protection on the plane as well, very thin frontal plate armour, as well as the armoured glass in the front of the cockpit as well. Now here we have the G91R4, and again this one has a little bit of a different layout. This actually carries some of the Nord air-to-air missiles as well, which are the French brand of air-to-air missiles. Now with the Nord air-to-air missiles, they're actually controlled by the pilot after launch and don't have an active homing system, so you've got to control them to your target. I don't know how they work in game though, I've not actually tested them, so yes, I don't know how exactly they're going to work in game. Of course the Nord was pretty bad in poor weather conditions and use at night because you had to be able to see your target to fire it, but you do also get the AIM-9 Sidewinders, and you get two extra Sidewinders on this plane as well. You, as well as getting the Nord air-to-surface missile as well, which is also pretty handy. The plane itself has 50 caliber machine guns on board, 4 of them, so very similar to the regular tech tree. Performance-wise, again, it's very similar to the regular tech tree as well. These planes were sold to Portugal after they were built initially for Greece and Turkey. So let's look at the pre-production. So pre-production sits at 8.7, so it is the lowest BR variant, and it does have some very cool paint jobs that you can put on for the plane, especially with the aerobatic display paint jobs that exist. One of my favourites, of course, is the Italian aviation team, the Tricchiali. And I'm going to butcher that pronunciation as well, but just a gorgeous looking paint job on this. Very, very cool plane. The plane itself has 450 cows on board. Performance is very similar to later models, and of course on board it can carry 2 500-pound bombs and then some rockets as well. The G91 R/1 is basically the production model of the G91, very similar payload. Now, the main difference comes with the G91 R/3, which was of course the German built variant, which has 4 hardpoints on board and has the 30mm cannons as well. This plane is just fantastic. I adore this thing. You may have noticed all the footage was taken from this plane as well, because those 30mm cannons make a difference. I found the 50 calibers to be a little bit unreliable on these planes. It's very manoeuvrable. It's just such a fun plane to fly. So if we just look at the modifications, you can see it has a bit more payload options. It actually gets the Nord air-to-surface missile, So a little bit frustrating that it doesn't get the air-to-air variant, but oh well. The difference between the air-to-air and the air-to-surface is the air-to-air actually has a proximity fuse to it, as well as having the rocket pods and the ability to carry a couple of different bomb loadouts. So, I'm going to end the video here, so I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, let me know in the comments below. Please feel free to join the Discord as well and all those kind of things. And I look forward to seeing you in the future for some more videos on some history and maybe the odd review of the game vehicle as well. Till next time, this is me, Carl Screezilla out. Bye bye.